The grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace shimmered under 1,000 crystal lights. Guests in silk gowns and tailored suits whispered politely, champagne glasses clinking like delicate bells. But in the center of the room, something terrible was about to happen. Something that would shock the entire nation. Camilla stood near the velvet rope, her face tight with anger. Across from her, Queen Charlotte smiled gracefully, unaware of the storm brewing just feet away. The air felt heavy, too heavy, like the moment before lightning strikes. No one saw it coming. Before we continue, if you love real stories that give you chills, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't believe where this goes. It happened in less than a second. Camilla leaned forward, her eyes burning with rage, and spat directly at the Queen's face. The room froze. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every glass paused halfway to trembling lips. Time itself seemed to shatter. Queen Charlotte stood perfectly still. A single drop slid down her porcelain cheek. Her expression didn't change. She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. But her eyes turned cold as winter stone. Then the guards moved. They appeared like shadows come to life, their polished boots thundering across the marble floor. 6 royal guards in crimson uniforms surrounded Camilla in seconds. Their white gloves gripped her arms with iron strength. She tried to pull away, but it was useless. They lifted her slightly off the ground, her expensive heels dragging uselessly across the polished stone. "Let me go," Camilla screamed, her voice cracking with panic. "You don't understand." She deserved it, but no one listened. The head guard, a tall man with a scar above his left eyebrow, spoke into his radio. His voice was calm, but deadly serious. "Code Crimson. Immediate removal. Prepare the holding cell." Camilla's face went white. She suddenly understood what was happening. This wasn't just being escorted out. This was arrest. Real arrest. The kind that ends careers, destroys reputations, shatters lives. "Please," she whispered now, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I didn't mean you assaulted the Queen," the guard said flatly. "Nothing you say matters now." They dragged her toward the side exit, past rows of horrified guests who pressed themselves against the walls. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others pulled out phones, filming everything. By tomorrow, this would be on every news station in the world. Queen Charlotte finally moved. She lifted one gloved hand and touched her cheek, where the spit had landed. A servant rushed forward with a silk handkerchief, but she waved him away. Instead, she looked directly at Camilla being hauled through the doorway. Their eyes met for one final second, and in that moment, Camilla knew her life was over. But why? What could possibly drive someone to do something so insane? What secret burned so hot inside Camilla's heart that she destroyed everything in one furious moment? The answer begins 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks before the spit heard around the world. Camilla sat in a lawyer's office with shaking hands. The envelope on the desk in front of her seemed to pulse with dark energy. She didn't want to open it. She knew once she did, everything would change. "You need to read it," the lawyer said gently. His name was Mr. Pemberton, and his gray eyes held sympathy she didn't want. Sympathy meant bad news. With trembling fingers, Camilla tore open the envelope. Inside was a single document. Official government letterhead. Royal seal stamped in gold. The words blurred as her eyes filled with tears. But 3 phrases cut through like knives. Property seizure approved. Royal family acquisition. Eviction notice. 30 days. The manor that had belonged to her bloodline for 200 years. The gardens where her grandmother taught her to recognize every flower by scent alone. The library where her father spent his final days reading poetry by the fireplace. The kitchen where her mother's laugh still seemed to echo in the copper. Pots gone. All of it. Taken. And the signature at the bottom made her blood turn to ice. "Queen Charlotte's personal advisor." "This can't be legal," Camilla whispered. "They can't just steal our land." Mr. Pemberton sighed heavily. "There's an old law buried deep in the royal charters. If land is deemed necessary for crown purposes, the monarchy can claim it. It hasn't been used in decades, but technically... He spread his hands helplessly. "It's legal? Crown purposes?" Camilla's voice rose sharply. What crown purposes? They're building a garden, a decorative garden for their summer parties. She stood up so fast, her chair fell backward. Her whole body shook with rage. For weeks, she'd tried to fight this through proper channels. She'd written letters, mad phone calls, hired lawyers, begged for meetings. Every door slammed in her face. Every request denied. And now time was running out. There's nothing more we can do, Mr. Pemberton said quietly. I'm sorry, Camilla. I truly am. She left his office in a daze. Outside, London traffic roared past like a river of metal and glass. People rushed by on sidewalks, laughing into phones, carrying shopping bags, living their normal lives. None of them knew her world was ending. That night, Camilla sat alone in the Manor's library. Moonlight spilled through the tall windows, painting everything silver and ghostly. She ran her fingers along the spines of books her great-grandfather had collected. She breathed in the smell of old paper and leather and memories. I won't let them take you, she whispered to the empty room. I won't. But what could she do? She was one woman against the weight of the crown itself. Then she remembered the invitation. The one that had arrived last week. Heavy cream paper with gold lettering. You are cordially invited to the Queen's Spring Gala at Buckingham Palace. First, she'd planned to ignore it. Why would she celebrate with the people destroying her life? But now a dark thought began forming in her mind. Dangerous, reckless, insane. What if she went? What if she looked Queen Charlotte in the eye and made her see? Made her understand? Or if understanding failed, made her pay? The night of the gala, Camilla stood in front of her mirror for an hour. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she applied lipstick. Deep red, the color of anger, the color of blood. She chose a black dress. Simple, elegant. The kind of outfit that wouldn't draw attention. She needed to blend in, to move through the crowd like a shadow. At least until the right moment. Her best friend Sarah had called that afternoon, worried. Please don't do anything stupid, Sarah had begged. I know you're hurting, but this won't fix anything. It'll only make things worse. Camilla had lied smoothly. I'm just going to show my face. Be polite. Maybe make one last plea for mercy. But in her heart, mercy was the last thing on her mind. The taxi ride to Buckingham Palace felt like traveling to her own execution. London lights blurred past the windows. She rehearsed what she would say, how she would say it. Her anger had been building for so long, it felt like a living thing inside her chest. Hot and wild and barely contained, security at the palace was tight. Guards checked invitations, scanned bags, watched everyone with trained eyes. Camilla smiled politely and handed over her invitation. The guard studied it, then her face, then nodded her through, inside. The palace was even more magnificent than she'd imagined, and she hated it. Every chandelier, every gold frame, every silk curtain represented wealth and power she could never touch. Wealth that was being used to crush people like her. She accepted a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking. She needed a clear head. She moved through the crowd, listening to conversations. Lords and ladies chattering about their vacation homes, their new cars, their children's private schools. None of them had ever worried about losing everything. None of them understood what it meant to be powerless. Then she saw her. Queen Charlotte stood near the central staircase, surrounded by admirers. She wore a gown of pale blue silk that probably cost more than Camilla's entire year of legal fees. Diamonds sparkled at her throat and wrists. She laughed at something someone said. The sound light. In musical she looked happy, carefree, like she hadn't just destroyed a family's legacy. Something snapped. Inside Camilla, she started walking. Her heels clicked against marble. Her vision narrowed until all she could see was the Queen's smiling face. The crowd seemed to part before her, though she barely noticed. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears like war drums. Someone touched her elbow. Miss, are you all right? She jerked away. Kept walking. Queen Charlotte was talking to an elderly duke now, her hand resting gracefully on his arm. so comfortable, so secure in her position, so certain nothing bad could ever touch her. Camilla was 10 feet away now, then 5, then 3. The Queen finally noticed her. Their eyes met. For just a second, Camilla thought she saw recognition flash across Charlotte's face. Did the Queen know who she was? Did she remember the name on those eviction papers she'd signed? "Your Majesty," Camilla said. Her voice came out strange, too flat. Too cold. Queen Charlotte smiled politely. "Good evening. You took everything from me." The smile faltered slightly. "I beg your pardon?" "My home, my history, my family's legacy. You took it all." Camilla's hands clenched into fists. For a garden, the people nearby were starting to notice. Conversations died. Heads turned. Queen Charlotte's expression hardened. "I don't know what you're referring to, liar." The word cut through the ballroom like a blade. Gasps rippled outward, and that's when Camilla did it. The guard's hands on her arms felt like iron clamps. Camilla's feet barely touched the ground as they hauled her through a side corridor away from the shocked guests. Her expensive dress twisted around her legs. One of her earrings fell off, bouncing across the marble with a tiny crystal sound. "You're making a mistake," she gasped, though she knew they weren't. She'd made the mistake. One terrible, irreversible mistake. They took her down a narrow staircase she didn't know existed. The walls changed from ornate gold leaf to plain white stone. The temperature dropped. The sounds of the party faded to nothing, replaced by the echo of boots on stairs. At the bottom was a door, heavy wood with iron bolts. The kind of door that doesn't open from the inside. The head guard pulled out a large key. "In," he said simply. The cell beyond was small, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. A wooden bench along one wall. A single barred window high up near the ceiling, too small for even a child to squeeze through. That was all. They pushed her inside. The door slammed shut with a sound like the end of the world. Camilla stood in the center of the cell, breathing hard, reality finally crashing down on her. What had she done? What had she actually really done? She'd assaulted the Queen of England, in front of hundreds of witnesses. With cameras rolling, her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the bench, head in her hands. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she let herself truly cry. Not angry tears, not frustrated tears, but the deep, broken sobs of someone who's destroyed their own life and knows it. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt meaningless in this cold stone box. Eventually, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Keys jingled. The door opened. A woman entered. Not a guard. She wore a gray suit, carried a leather briefcase, and had the calm, professional expression of someone who'd seen everything. "Miss Camilla Hartley," the woman said, pulling out a chair Camilla hadn't noticed in the corner. "I'm Detective Inspector Morrison. We need to talk about what happened tonight." Camilla wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I know what I did." "Do you?" Morrison sat down, crossing her legs. "Because from where I'm standing, you committed assault on the monarch. That's not just a crime, Miss Hartley. It's one of the most serious crimes possible. The legal term is treason." The word hung in the air like poison gas. "I didn't." Camilla's voice cracked. "I wasn't trying to hurt her. I needed her to see me. To understand. Understand what?" And then it all poured out. The estate, the eviction, the impossible legal battle. The feeling of being crushed under royal power with no way to fight back. The desperation that had built and built until it exploded in one insane moment. Morrison listened without interrupting. She took notes in a small leather notebook. Her expression never changed. When Camilla finally finished, Morrison closed her notebook. "That's a terrible situation," she said quietly. "I don't doubt your pain is real, but you do understand that none of that justifies what you did tonight." "I know." Camilla's voice was barely a whisper. "You're going to be charged. Probably multiple charges. Assault, disturbance of the peace, possibly the treason statute, though that's rare these days." Morrison paused. You're looking at serious prison time. Years, potentially. The room spun. Camilla gripped the edge of the bench. However, Morrison continued, and something in her tone made Camilla look up. There may be another factor you're not aware of. Do you mean? Morrison leaned forward slightly. The Queen asked to speak with you. They brought Camilla to a different room, still inside the palace, but in a wing she'd never seen. The walls here were painted soft cream, hung with oil paintings of landscapes and horses. A fire crackled in a marble fireplace. 2 chairs sat facing each other near the windows. Camilla's hands were no longer cuffed, but 2 guards stood by the door, watching, waiting. She didn't have to wait long. The door opened, and Queen Charlotte entered. She'd changed from her gala gown into something simpler, a navy dress and pearl necklace. She'd washed her face. Without the makeup and formal styling, she looked younger, more human. She also looked tired. Sit, the Queen said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Camilla sat. Her whole body felt numb. Queen Charlotte sat across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire popped and hissed. Outside the window, London glittered with a million lights. You could have killed me, you know, the Queen said finally. Her voice was quiet. Not angry exactly. Something else. Not with what you did, but with what you represented. If you'd had a weapon, if others had joined you, if you'd sparked some kind of riot, ... She trailed off. Security is reviewing everything now. Heads will roll over how you got that close. I didn't want to kill you, Camilla whispered. I'm not a monster. Then what did you want? The question hung between them. What had she wanted? In that moment of rage and desperation, what had she actually hoped to accomplish? I wanted you to see me, Camilla said, to know my name, to understand that your decisions destroy real people with real lives. Queen Charlotte studied her. Tell me about your home. So Camilla did. She talked about her grandmother's rose garden, her father's library, the creek that ran through the property where she'd spent every summer afternoon as a child, the Christmas mornings by the giant tree in the entrance hall, the feeling of history in every room, the weight of knowing her family had protected and loved that land for generations. And you're taking it to build a garden, Camilla finished, for parties, for decoration. The Queen's jaw tightened. Is that what you think? That I'm some villain who steals land for fun? Aren't you? Queen Charlotte stood abruptly and walked to the window. She was silent so long Camilla thought she wouldn't answer. That land sits above a crucial aquifer, the Queen said finally. Our environmental scientists discovered it 2 years ago. If properly protected and managed, it could provide clean water to 3 surrounding communities for decades. But it requires careful stewardship. No private development. No chemical runoff. No wells drilled in the wrong places. Camilla felt the floor tilt under her. What? The garden is a cover story? Queen Charlotte turned to face her. The real project is underground, protecting that water source. It's classified because we're negotiating with some very powerful development companies who want that land for shopping centers. If they knew about the aquifer, they'd fight us even harder. But my lawyers never mentioned because they don't know. Almost no one does. The Queen's expression was hard. I couldn't tell every person affected because information leaks. It always does. And if the developers found out, shook her head. Thousands of people would lose access to clean water. Camilla felt like she'd been punched. So you let me think. Let everyone think that I'm a tyrant taking land for vanity projects, yes? Queen Charlotte returned to her chair. I've been called much worse, Miss Hartley. Part of this job is making decisions that make people hate you, because explaining would make things worse. The room felt too small suddenly. Too hot. Camilla couldn't breathe properly. If I'd known, she started. You'd have what? Not spat in my face? The Queen's voice turned sharp. You'd have still lost your home. The reason doesn't change that. No, Camilla admitted. It doesn't.
Ow!
They sat in heavy silence. Queen Charlotte sighed deeply and rubbed her temples. Here's what's going to happen, she said. You'll be charged. That's non-negotiable. What you did was witnessed by hundreds of people and recorded by dozens of cameras. I can't make that disappear, Camilla nodded. She'd expected nothing less. However, the Queen continued, I can speak to the prosecutors. Context matters. Intent matters. You'll likely face community service, fines, and probation rather than prison time. Your record will reflect the assault charge, but it won't destroy your entire future. Why would you do that for me? The Queen's smile was sad, because I've spent 20 years making impossible decisions that hurt real people. Because I know what it's like to feel powerless even when everyone thinks you have all the power. And because, she paused, because maybe I could have handled the estate seizures better. Found ways to explain, even partially. But I got so used to carrying secrets alone that I forgot people aren't just obstacles to work around. They're human beings with histories and heartbreak. Camilla's throat tightened. I'm sorry. For what I did. I was wrong, yes, you were. Queen Charlotte stood, but I understand why. That doesn't excuse it, but I understand. A guard opened the door. The Queen started to leave, then stopped. Your family's estate, she said. The manor itself is gone. We need that land. But there's a cottage on the western edge of the property. Small, but it has the same view of the hills your grandmother loved. It's not on the aquifer, and it's not needed for the project. She looked directly at Camilla. It could be signed over to you. Kept in your family name? Tears spilled down Camilla's face. Is why? Because sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same thing. I'm bound by law to take the land. But I'm not bound to take everything. The Queen's expression softened. Go home to that cottage, Miss Hartley. Rebuild what you can. And maybe learn that things are rarely as simple as they appear. She left. The door closed softly behind her. Camilla sat alone in the room as dawn light began creeping through the windows. London was waking up. Somewhere, newspapers were already printing headlines about the scandal at the palace. Her name would be everywhere. People would judge her, mock her, despise her. But she'd also learned something tonight. About assumptions. About the hidden complexities behind decisions that seem cruel. About how anger, however justified it feels, can blind you to truths you desperately need to see. 3 months later, Camilla stood in the cottage Queen Charlotte had given her. It was small, yes. Just 4 rooms and a tiny kitchen. But through the window, she could see the same rolling hills her grandmother had painted in watercolors. The same sunset that turned the sky purple and gold. She'd completed her community service, paid her fines, started rebuilding her life piece by careful piece. And every evening, she sat on the cottage's small porch and thought about that night. The worst and strangest night of her life. The night she'd lost everything and somehow, impossibly, found a kind of understanding she'd never expected. She'd never forget the feeling of rage that drove her to that terrible moment. But she'd also never forget Queen Charlotte's tired eyes, the quiet truth that every one of Queens carries burdens no one else can see. Some stories don't have happy endings, but they have real ones. And sometimes, that's enough.